Legislature Judiciary. This article gives information on elections in Afghanistan. Though Afghanistan has had democratic elections throughout the 20th century, the election institutions have varied as changes in regimes have disrupted political continuity. In 1949, Afghan Prime Minister Shah Mahmud allowed relatively free National Assembly elections, and the resulting 7th Afghan Parliament, which has become known as the Liberal Parliament, gave voice to criticism of the government and traditional institutions, allowed opposition political groups to come to life, and enacted some liberal reforms, including laws providing for a free press. This being the 7th Parliament, 6 must have been elected from 1924 to around 1945. The Afghan parliamentary election in 1952 was considered a step backward from the one in 1949. As part of the government crackdown in 1951 and 1952 ending liberalization, the Kabul and Ghazni University Student Union had been dissolved in 1951. Newspapers critical of the government had been shut down, and many of the leaders of the opposition had been jailed. In 1964, King Muhammad Zahir Shah ordered the convening of a Loya Jirga, a national gathering that included the members of the National Assembly, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and both constitutional commissions to draft and approve a new Afghan constitution. 167 members of the assembly were elected by the provinces, and 34 members were appointed directly by the king. Although most of the 452 people assembled were predominantly officials who could be expected to support the royal line, the Loya Jirga of September 1964 also included members elected from the entire nation. While the government did screen out many potential dissidents, on the whole, delegates to the Loya Jirga appeared to represent the full range of social, political, and religious opinion. Most observers described the 1965 election as remarkably fair despite difficulties such as widespread illiteracy, low voter turnout, lack of political parties, and attempts by some government officials to influence the results. The 216-member Walisi Jirga, the lower house of parliament, included representation by anti-royalists, supporters of the king, Pashtun nationalists, both the left and right of the political spectrum, entrepreneurs and industrialists, political liberals, a small leftist group, as well as conservative Muslim leaders who still opposed secularization. This was Afghanistan's 12th parliament, so there must have been 3 more National Assembly elections in 1955 to 62. The 1969 parliamentary elections, with voter turnout not much higher than in 1965, produced a parliament that more or less reflected the distribution of power and population of rural Afghanistan. Conservative landowners and businessmen predominated, and many more non-Pashtuns were elected than in the previous legislature. Most of the urban liberals and all-female delegates lost their seats. Few leftists were in the new 13th parliament, although Babrak Karmal and Hafizullah Amin were elected from districts in and near the capital, Kabul. In 1987, the Soviet-backed Afghan Communist government introduced a law permitting the formation of other political parties, announced that it would be prepared to share power with representatives of opposition groups in the event of a coalition government, and issued a new constitution providing for a new bicameral National Assembly and a president to be indirectly elected to a 7-year term. Local elections were held throughout the country in August 1987. With a considerable number of the elected representatives reported to be non-PDPA members. On September 30, Muhammad Najibullah was unanimously elected as President of the Revolutionary Council. In November 1987, a Loya Jirga unanimously elected Najibullah as President of the state. In April 1988, elections were held for both houses of the new National Assembly. The People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan won 46 seats in the House of Representatives and controlled the government with support from the National Front, which won 45 seats, and from various newly recognized left-wing parties, which had won a total of 24 seats. Although the election was boycotted by the Mujahideen, the government left 50 of the 234 seats in the House of Representatives. as well as a small number of seats in the Senate, vacant in the hope that the guerrillas would end their armed struggle and participate in the government. Following the withdrawal of Soviet troops and the ouster of the communist government in April 1992, an indirect election for president took place in December 1992. An interim government, headed by a prime minister, was formed in June 1993. Under the 2001 Bonn Agreement, Afghanistan was scheduled to hold presidential and parliamentary elections in 2004 in order to replace the transitional government led by American-backed Hamid Karzai since his appointment in December 2001. Presidential elections were held